How much of an impact will XRP ETFs actually have on the price for XRP? I wanted to take a closer look and better understand, let's say we got 5 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion. What is the impact on price? I have all of the information that you need to see. First, we're going to go ahead and get into why ETFs are going to be such a vital piece for liquidity and the growth of the XRP ecosystem going forward. We're also going to talk about some institutions. We're going to talk about crypto and neobanks. We're going to get into some information around Brad Garlinghouse. I got a clip from Ray Dalio talking about the economy, and of course, Ripple getting into or getting access partially to the US Treasury markets, vitally important. We're going to get into all of this and more. Let's go ahead and start here. A leveraged XRP ETF quietly launched and crushed expectations while everyone watched Bitcoin stumble. This fund soared under the radar, and here's how the T2X long daily XRP ETF, also known as XXRP, became one of the hottest launches of 2025. The launch day was a complete banger. On April 8, 2025, Tarek launched an XRP on the NYSE Accra, offering 2x daily exposure to XRP via swaps and futures. On day one alone, it pulled in 5.55 million in trading volume, ranking in the top 5% of all ETF debuts, a huge win in a tough market. Remember, the stock market has been going down, right? The last few weeks. So to launch this product and have it be top 5 of all ETF debuts in a down market, it says something pretty strong about the demand. And remember, not everybody is at or has access to this, T-Cram bank. They're waiting probably for their own banks to launch their own type of products. And that's what, a lot of institutional and of course retail with big money that doesn't want to have to deal with custodying their own tokens. They're going to use these ETFs to load up. Momentum didn't stop there. Day 2 volume, a whopping 13.3 million. Day 3 still strong at 8.88 million. By April 11th, volume hit 8.58 million, closing at 29 to 21, up from 23.37. XXRP was clearly built for traders, and they showed up. Institutional investment is growing fast. XXRP isn't for the average hodler. It's built for sophisticated players seeking to amplify returns. Hedge funds and pro traders now have a regulated, leveraged XRP vehicle, something they've been waiting for years. Timing was everything and nothing. Despite the monster debut, XRP barely hit headlines. Why? Bitcoin dropped 11.8%. Ethereum plunged 45.4%. If you 12 months ago made the decision to buy Ethereum, you would have lost 50% of all of your money. Okay. If instead you use that same amount of money to buy XRP, you'd have been up 300%. That is a stark difference between losing half of your money and going up 300%. Huge, right? Very good for XRP and its community. Obviously, people want more. I think we will get more. Regulatory green lights helped. XRP's approval came during a more crypto-friendly SEC regime. This says the case against Ripple had wrapped, clearing legal fog and fueling institutional confidence. Smart design, smart investors. XRP tracks XRP through swaps and futures, not spot holdings. Perfect for fast-moving, high-volatility strategy at a 1.85 expense ratio. It's priced for performance, not passivity. Performance and hype. Other crypto ETFs fizzled. XRP quiet dominance, and then talks about the broader but key numbers to watch. 5.5 million debut, 13.3 million peak, 29.21 price closing by April 11th. Top 5 among all ETFs. That's a big news. So I wanted to better understand, right? Of course, we know that if $5 million or $10 million were to go into XRP right now, that could drastically change the market cap for XRP, sometimes in the billions. And what we call that is the multiplier effect. And I've done multiple videos on this recently, and I've talked a lot about this in my live streams. The multiplier effect is real, and we need to better understand how much of an impact these ETFs will have. So to better understand this about XRP ETFs, using a multiplier effect of 1x, so basically no multiplier effect, 50x, 100x, and 200x. If 5 billion, 10 billion, and $20 billion is added, in XRP ETFs, what is that going to do for the price? So it calculates all of the stuff, right? Multipliers to be considered, the 1x. I wanted to do a 1x so you could see one for one how much of it's going to change, okay? So here is the breakdown. You have 5 billion here, 10 billion, 20 billion. So here's the 1x. So you have the how much value, the multiplier, the new market cap, and estimated price. So as you can see, 5 billion at a 1x, not going to do much, not much of all for the price. Okay. It's a couple cents. If we're using a 50x multiplier, which means 5 billion actually is 250 billion, this would be 6.43, $6.43. If we had a 100 or a 200x multiplier, we would be looking at $10.80 and almost $20 for XRP for $5 billion in value brought onto the ledger. Now let's go look at 10 billion. So we have the 1x, 50, 100, and 200x. 224 would be the 1x at 10 billion. 50x, we're going to get to $10.80 at a 50x, and 100x it'd be almost $20. And at a 200x with 10 billion in real value, we could be looking at a $36 XRP. Now, if you wanted to take a look at 20 billion, of course, I got the 150, 100, and X. The 1X would be $2.42. The 50X would be $20 basically. 100X would be $36.98, and a 200X on $20 billion coming into XRP ETFs could change the price per XRP to $71. Now, this is all going to be, it's very difficult to get exact numbers. The multiplier effect could change. It could go up, it could go down. It's very difficult to tell you exactly. When I was doing all the research for this, and I was doing, I must have looked at 15 or 20 different examples of the multiplier effect. I saw the lowest one technically being around 40 to 50 X multiplier, and I've seen the highest ones into the thousands. Those were kind of out of the norm. The regular ones are like 100 or 200X multipliers. Now, I wanted to really better understand this because, you look at 20 billion, you might say, Sensei, that's a lot of money. There's just no way. But how much money do you think went into the Bitcoin ETF at its height? 110, 115 billion. Okay. Right now, I think there's still about 95 billion wrapped up in the Bitcoin ETF. And so I wanted to better understand, hey, if we actually, here it is. As of April 18, 2025, US spot Bitcoin ETF stands at approximately 95 billion. Okay. So what happens if XRP really becomes this token that's going to be used globally for institutions to move value, to tokenize value, right? To use stable coins, create their own stable coins, basically this new network for the transition of value, tokenized value, whatever it is. When people realize that XRP has a bigger use case, not just to store a value, but to tokenize, to transact, right? To DeFi, to marketplaces, this could be, you could see 100 billion going into XRP over the next few years, right? As people wake up and understand, holy shit, this technology is here. Our government is aggressively adopting the technology. Regulation is being passed. What are we looking at? So here is 50x, 100x, and 200x. If we got $95 billion and we're looking at a 50x multiplier, you're talking about an $85 XRP. 100 multiplier would be $167 XRP. And if we got $95 billion at a 200x multiplier, it'd be $333. Now, it is also very hard to predict all of this stuff and show it to you. Reason for that is when these ETFs, when people are buying into these ETFs, that XRP is actually going to come off of a circulating supply because that XRP will be locked up to represent those contracts. So it depends how much XRP is locked up. If we can lock up 5-10 billion XRP, that would be a game changer as well. All right. You take a look at how many institutions are geared up and ready. You start to smile. I know I do, because we're looking at this right now, but imagine, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months. How many more institutions will be added to this list? It is the most sought after ETF right now, hands down. An XRP ETF is actually more sought after, and I think it will do better numbers than Ethereum. Ethereum is just Ethereum is not dead, but it's for sure felt like that over the last few months, or last maybe few years actually. Okay, Cypress Demonicore posted this. I thought this was a great clip. Let me play it for you.
These, right? Because my favorite saying is banking is fucked, and it pretty much is. And so they're looking at the people previously who are saying, oh, you got a shit experience, now we've got a better experience. And I'm looking at Revolut and Wise going, oh my God, that's a shit experience. Imagine what an on-chain bank will look like. And anyone who's got like young kids, a few years old, 2 or 3 years old, imagine in 15 years when they're like 18 years old, when like maybe 20 or 30% of the economy is stable coins. they're going to come into a world where they may never have a normal bank, right? And the normal banks have lots of terrible restrictions, right? They tell you who you can send money to. They tell you who you can sign up. They lock your funds. Then you got to call customer service, explain why you sent money to a crypto exchange. There's all this rubbish that comes. And then it depends on where your passport is, where your residency is. Just like infinite amount of bullshit that's been created just because of country-based regulations. But there is a new, better world where you've got this pristine on-chain bank, which doesn't depend on your passport, doesn't depend on your residency, and it will appear in the next 10 years, where you can do all the things you can do with a bank, which include having a cash account, a savings account, the equivalent of a card, which will be done as an on-chain payment with maybe something like a card, but it'll be done on-chain instead of via Visa or MasterCard. And then all the other things like stocks are going to be on-chain, crypto's already on-chain, there'll be lending on-chain, everything, right? And so I would dare say that most people, kids that are 2 to 3 years old now, will come straight into an on-chain bank world, which is probably very hard to imagine for us. But I can almost guarantee that half of them will and won't have, and they'll be paid natively in stablecoins and they'll never really care about what the old world looked like. And guess what? They're also trading and giving money to people all over the world who are operating on an internet native economy, right? Whether they're influencers or whatever that is, they're selling goods, whatever, well, unless Trump keeps putting tariffs on, but and that's the world that I'm excited about building about.
Guys, listen, really interesting point here. If you have kids that are, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, wouldn't it be interesting to lock up, let's say 1,000 XRP or 5,000 XRP for them for when they turn 18? How much money do you think that would be when they turn 18? Right. We are still, very clueless about how long adoption will take, how long it'll take to bring the next billion people in. But we have a firm belief that crypto is here to stay. We just don't know exactly, which crypto is going to be more adopted than the next one in the top 15 or 20 tokens. So, lock up some Cardano or some XRP or some XLM or some XDC or some Quant and see what happens. I think, talking with a financial advisor, somebody that you trust, might be something good for your kids down the line. Pay for their college, maybe buy their first house. If I had a 2 or 3 year old, I'd be thinking about it, but maybe one day. All right. I don't really need to get into this. I'm going to save this for another video. All right. I wanted to play this though. Really important. Ray Dalio speaking about the time that we are in currently in the United States, where we're looking globally, right? The global supply trade is broken down and we don't know what the impact of that's going to be. We saw the impact of, C-19 in 2020 and how the people didn't have access to certain goods. And when those goods did come onto the shelves, they were dramatically marked up. And that was costly for families all around the United States and globally, right? Are we entering that same period? Do we need to be saving our pennies and our dollars for higher prices? Let me have Ray Dalio tell you what he thinks.
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession.
So how the Trump administration handles what they're dealing with right now, this tariff renegotiation. The hard part is, if you remember early in the Trump, when Trump got in, they got rid of a lot of State Department officials and other key bodies of government. They wiped out, 60, 70, 80, 90% of people that worked in some of these places. And you need these people to help you negotiate all of these trade deals. One person can't negotiate 75 or 150 trade deals. It's impossible, especially if that one person is the president dealing with everything else that comes. So, how the Trump administration handles this could be great for Americans and the rest of the world, and it could be catastrophic. We are at that middle point. We just don't know how it's going to turn out, but keep an eye open, keep listening, keep educating yourself, and hopefully we get through this thing unscathed. Hopefully. Ripple is moving to become the primary clearinghouse of U.S. Treasury markets. If this becomes reality and settlement moves through the XRPL, daily volume around $6 trillion. Matthew Liny is not the one to really post, BS or fake information. I feel like he does a really good job about being serious and fact checking along the way. And so he just want to share this. If you want to read this, please do. It talks about the SEC adopted rules intended to expand central clearing of Treasury security and repo transactions. It says, how do we expect the sponsored access and agent clearing models outlined by the FICC to be used in direct participants? Do you expect clearinghouse members to continue posting margin on behalf of some clients? Anyways, some bank jargon here, I guess you'd say. Here's a scale of markets, scoop of cash and repo markets. How much money is in these markets? Here you go. It's got to be like, is this billions? 5,000 billions? Sometimes these charts are very, I don't know if it's millions or billions on this. I think it's probably billions. But anyways, let's keep looking here. What else he had posted? Designing DLT blockchain for tokenized treasuries. Remember, Ripple has been working on this with partners like OpenEden. And of course, with BlackRock and Ondo getting access to tokenized treasuries there, the more XRP that we can lock up in DeFi products, the less XRP that's floating around in circulating supply, and the more, if we want to increase the price of XRP, okay, there are a few ways you can do that. One is by simply adding value to the network, okay? Another way, without adding value to the network, is reducing circulating supply. You can reduce the circulating supply from 58 billion to 48 billion or 38 billion or 28 billion. You have, if you can reduce it by half, you've raised the price of the token by double. Okay. Charles Schwab, CEO, confirms company will roll out Bitcoin, XRP, and crypto trading within the next 12 months. I think we all expected this, right? Like, we've been talking about this for God knows how long, 3 years, 4 years since I've been doing this and coming up here and talking with you guys. Even before my channel here, I've been talking to Cryptoneers members, and, we could see this back in 2021 that eventually banks are going to offer custody of crypto to their customers. It's inevitable, right? It makes sense. With your bank, you have a relationship there. Most people trust their banking relationships. There's always going to be stories of somebody getting screwed somewhere, but the overall arc of people trust their bank. They're happy with their bank, their home loan, their car loan, their student loans, their credit cards, whatever it is with that bank. Just makes sense to say, hey, the crypto is going mainstream. We'd like to offer you a place to store your crypto assets that will be safe and secure. And those banks will go to Ripple custody. They will go to Fireblocks and they will ask for custody help, because banks do not want to take the risk of creating their own infrastructure only to have a problem later down the line. And that could be catastrophic for the bank. Here is a newer clip from Christine Lagarde discussing the digital euro. We've been talking about that a lot on this channel in recent times. Basically, what you need to know is by October 2025, that is when we will know what they are going to do. There's some laws and some rules that need to be changed in the background to allow a CBDC to come into place. And that is what Christine Lagarde is waiting for, either for a yes or for a no.
In the present geopolitical environment, it is even more urgent for fiscal and structural policies to make the euro area economy more productive, competitive, and resilient. The European Commission's Competitiveness Compass provides a concrete roadmap for action, and its proposals, including on simplification, should be swiftly adopted. This includes completing the Savings and Investment Union following a clear and ambitious timetable, which should help savers benefit from more opportunities to invest and improve firms' access to finance, especially risk capital. It is also important to rapidly establish the legislative framework to prepare the ground for the potential introduction of the digital euro. Governments should ensure sustainable public finances in line with the EU's economic governance framework and prioritize essential growth-enhancing structural reforms and strategic investments.
All right. A few more things I want to show you before we get out of here. Ripple explains how XRP price will be invisible to customers. Plus, if XRP has a higher value, it increases the value of the solution because it increases liquidity on the network. The higher the value, XRP can convey a higher value than other currencies. Let me just play this.
As a customer, is there any exposure to fluctuations in the price of the cryptocurrency?
Yes, great question. No. As a business that's been in this industry for a long time, we know that the senders and receivers are very focused on fiat. That's their lifeline, that's their blood, that's their entire business. So we hide any real visibility into the cryptocurrency XRP. So in the system, you'll really just see a fiat to fiat payment option. Because of that, we hide and protect our customers from any fluctuation in the open market. It's irrelevant to you how much XRP equals how much Singapore dollars, for example. All you want to know is that you can make your $1 million payment into Vietnam, for example. So the customer is never exposed to any fluctuation in price of the digital asset. Yeah.
Okay.
Really exciting stuff. This guy seems like he's bored, but all good. A little bit more of what we just discussed and talked about. All right. One more thing I think we have to talk about. I just want to give a big shout out to the people that are coming together. The XRP Army. This is from XRP Army in the Bronx. Big shout out to everybody that's meeting up, sharing ideas, coming together and spreading the word. Means the world to me. This is a beautiful sight. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a fantastic day. Appreciate you being here. Aloha.